We'd like to thank the University Library for hosting this event here in the beautiful Morrison Library. I invite you all to sign up on our mailing list, which is over on the librarian's desk. We have a really lovely pin for you to sign up with, too, as a choice of 4 different colors today. Also on our website, lunchpoems.berkeley.edu, you can view this reading and our past readings on YouTube, where we have our very own channel. And if you are interested in staying connected to poetry, particularly over the long winter break, I would encourage you to perhaps binge watch some U.S. poet laureates. Natasha Trethway is there, Kay Ryan, Robert Hass, and the current laureate, Tracy K. Smith. So please do check out our channel. In our spring portion of our program, we will welcome on February 1st another laureate, Tucson's Poet Laureate, T.C. Talbert. So please do come back and join us. This afternoon, we have a special treat, a welcome from UC Berkeley's 11th Chancellor, Carol Christ. She began her academic career at Christ. I knew I was going to say it. I practiced and practiced and practiced. But thank you for forgiving me. She began her academic career as a faculty member in the English department, teaching, you guessed it, poetry. She has served as provost of the Berkeley campus twice and as president of Smith College. Please welcome Chancellor Christ.
Thank you, Giovanni. It is so wonderful to see this room so full of people who love poetry. And I have never been to an event here where there are people literally hanging from the balconies. So that says a lot about Rita Dove and says a lot about this community's love for poetry. I thought there was no better way that I could say a few words of both welcome and introduction than to read a poem by Rita Dove. And this is a poem, I think, that has particular meaning to this community at this moment. We've spent a lot of time this semester thinking about DACA, thinking about immigration status, thinking about unauthorized students, and also thinking about visa restrictions. And this poem is a poem called Exit. It's very short. It's not really a formal sonnet, but it is 14 lines long. And it has what I think of as the characteristics of Rita Dove's poetry. It is passionate about social justice, about women's issues. It is extraordinarily moving emotionally, and it has a kind of sharpness of imagery and I kind of connections among images that I think is really beautiful. So, Exit. Just when hope withers, the visa is granted. The door opens to a street like in the movies, clean of people, of cats, except it is your street. You are leaving. A visa has been granted provisionally, a fretful word. The windows you have closed behind you are turning pink, doing what they do every dawn. Here's the gray. The door to the taxicab waits. This suitcase, the saddest object in the world. Well, the world's open, and now through the windshield, the sky begins to blush, as you did when your mother told you what it took to be a woman in this life. So please, it's so wonderful to have you here, and now you're going to get a really formal introduction with all the awards and honors.
Thank you, Chancellor Christ, and thank you all for coming, maybe especially our peanut gallery, Sacramento Waldorf High School. Thank you for coming all the way down. I'm Jeffrey G. O'Brien, the director of Lunch Poems, and we're incredibly honored to have, to my mind, one of the most important poets of the last 40 or so years, actually, in Rita Dove here today. And I'm going to briefly introduce Ms. Dove by reaching all the way back to early work for 3 reasons. The first is that a huge collected spanning 30 years from 74 to 2004 came out last year. It's here for purchase from Mo's Books, and Ms. Dove is going to be kind enough to sign books after her reading. The second reason is totally sentimental. I still have these first edition paperbacks from the mid-'80s, which the great critic Helen Vendler taught me out of in my freshman year. So for that reason, I wanted to. But the third is that to reach back to the early work is to effect a really modest act of retrieval. And I think that retrieval, the poetic form of it, the poetic action of retrieval, has been really crucial to Rita Dove and her work over those many years. Ezra Pound's dictum, most of us know that the poem must include history. But I think for Rita Dove, it's not simply that history must be restored to or included in the poem, but that persons need to be restored to history so that they don't turn into abstractions, lazy abstractions, manipulable abstractions. And Rita Dove returns quotidian action, historical sense, and personality, and the psychic life of family to that history again and again and again. I really value that. Enough that I'm also going to read, but I'm only going to read 1 stanza and 1 line to show you an example of retrieval in action. It's from a poem called Dusting. The second stanza reads this way. Under her hand scrolls and crests gleam, darker still. What was his name? That silly boy at the fair with the rifle booth, and his kiss and the clear bowl with 1 bright fish rippling wound. The final line of that poem answers the question, what was the name of that boy? It's just Maurice. It's a single word, a name, a line, and a stanza. And that's an act of retrieval at a distance in that poem. And I think it constitutes what Rita Dove is always doing, whether she's engaging the Western canon of art or her own family. She's erasing the coding of time on things. She's getting rid of the dust so that everything, including names and persons, can gleam. Please help me in welcoming Rita Dove.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It does the heart good to be among books and people who love them. So thank you all for coming in the middle of the day. For me, it's the beginning of the day. I'm nocturnal, but that's all right. And hi, guys. Good to see you. You'll keep me honest up there. So I think that what I really love to do, these introductions were so wonderful, and I thank the Chancellor, thank you, and thank you, Jeffrey, for your beautiful introduction. It's slightly, I always feel slightly nonplussed, like, who was that person who wrote those things? I'd like to start with a poem from Thomas and Beulah, the book that Jeffrey referenced. It is a story of a marriage. A story, I guess you could say, of 2 very ordinary people, based on my grandparents, but not really them. And in this poem, the wife, Beulah, is doing what anyone who has been a parent of very young children does at some point in their life. You need to get away from said children, just for an instant, to retain your sanity. Daystar. She wanted a little room for thinking, but she saw diapers steaming on the line, a doll slumped behind the door. So she lugged a chair behind the garage to sit out the children's naps. Sometimes there were things to watch, the pinched armor of a vanished cricket, a floating maple leaf. Other days she stared until she was assured when she closed her eyes, she'd see only her own vivid blood. She had an hour, at best, before Liza appeared pouting from the top of the stairs. And just what was Mother doing out back with the field mice? Why, building a palace. Later that night, when Thomas rolled over and lurched into her, she would open her eyes and think of the place that was hers for an hour, where she was nothing, pure nothing, in the middle of the day. Thank you. Thank you. You don't have to, don't do that. But thank you. No, it's really wonderful to hear your appreciation, but I grew up in libraries where you could not make noise. In fact, let me do this poem because it is a love song to librarians. And in truth, I did grow up in the branch library around my house in Akron, Ohio. It was Maple Valley Branch Library. And this poem is called that, Maple Valley Branch Library, 1967. For a 15-year-old, there was plenty to do. Browse the magazines, skip into the adult section to see what vast tristesse was born of rush hour traffic, décolletés, and the plague of too much money. There was so much to discover. How to lay out a road, the language of flowers, and the place of women in the tribe of Moche. There were equations elegant as a French twist, fractal geometry's unwinding maple leaf. I could follow step by step the slow disclosure of a pineapple jello mold, or take the path of Harold's purple crayon through the bedroom window and onto a lavender spill of stars. Oh, I could walk any aisle and smell wisdom. Put a hand out to touch the rough curve of bound leather, the harsh parchment of dreams. As for the improbable librarian with her salt and paprika upsweep, her British accent and sweater clip, mom of a kid I knew from school, I'd go up to her desk and ask for help on bareback rodeo or binary codes, phonics, Gestalt theory, lead poisoning in the late Roman Empire, the play of light in Dutch Renaissance painting. I would claim to be researching pre-Columbian pottery or Chinese foot binding, but all I wanted to know was, tell me what you've read that keeps that half smile afloat above the collar of your impeccable blouse. So I read Gone with the Wind because it was big, and haiku because they were small. I studied history for its rhapsody of dates, lingered over Cubist art for the way it showed all sides of a guitar at once. All the time in the world was there, and sometimes all the world on a single page. As much as I could hold on my plastic card's imprint, I took greedily. 6 books, 6 volumes of bliss, the stuff we humans are made of, words and sighs and silence, ink and whips, Brahma and cosine, corsets and poetry and blood sugar levels. I carried it home past 5 blocks of aluminum siding in the old garage where, on its boarded up doors, someone had scrawled, "I can eat an elephant if I take small bites." Yes, I said, to no one in particular, that's what I'm gonna do. Of course, I have a list and I'm changing it immediately. It happens every time. The almost a sonnet that Chancellor Chris read, it comes from a book called Mother Love, which is based loosely on the, or maybe not so loosely, on the Persephone and Demeter myth. It's every parent's nightmare. And this poem is from the daughter's point of view as she goes out and is kidnapped by the god of the underworld. The narcissus flower. I remember my foot in its frivolous slipper, a frightened bird, Not the earth unzipped, but the way I could see my own fingers and hear myself scream as the blossom incinerated. And though nothing could chasten the plunge, this man, adamant as a knife easing into the humblest crevice, I found myself at the center of a calm so pure it was hate. The mystery is, you can eat fear before fear eats you. You can live beyond dying and become a queen whom nothing surprises. This poem is based on a horrific incident, unfortunately not too uncommon in our world. Though this one was many years ago in the Dominican Republic, when the dictator at the time, Rafael Trujillo, ordered 20,000 Haitian blacks killed. They worked side by side with the Dominicans in the cane field, and the only way he could distinguish between the Haitians and the Dominicans was to have them pronounce a word with the letter R in it, because the Haitians did not roll their R like in Spanish. They had a more French pronunciation. Parsley, the cane fields. There is a parrot imitating spring in the palace, its feathers parsley green. Out of the swamp the cane appears to haunt us, and we cut it down. El General searches for a word. He is all the world there is. Like a parrot imitating spring, we lie down screaming as rain punches through, and we come up green. We cannot speak an R. Out of the swamp the cane appears, and then the mountain we call in whispers, Catalina. The children gnaw their teeth to arrowheads. There is a parrot imitating spring. El General has found his word, perejil. Who says it lives. He laughs, teeth shining out of the swamp. The cane appears in our dreams, lashed by wind and streaming, and we lie down. For every drop of blood, there is a parrot imitating spring. Out of the swamp, the cane appears. The palace. The word the general's chosen is parsley. It is fall, when thoughts turn to love and death. The general thinks of his mother, how she died in the fall, and he planted her walking cane at the grave, and it flowered, each spring stolidly forming 4-star blossoms. The general pulls on his boots. He stomps to her room in the palace, the one without curtains, the one with a parrot in a brass ring. As he paces, he wonders, who can I kill today? And for a moment, the little knot of screams is still. The parrot, who has traveled all the way from Australia in an ivory cage, is coy as a widow, practicing spring. Ever since the morning his mother collapsed in the kitchen while baking skull-shaped candies for the Day of the Dead, the general has hated sweets. He orders pastries brought up for the bird. They arrive dusted with sugar on a bed of lace. The knot in his throat starts to twitch. He sees his boots the first day in battle splashed with mud and urine as a soldier falls at his feet, amazed. How stupid he looked at the sound of artillery. I never thought it would sing, the soldier said, and died. Now the general sees the fields of sugar cane lashed by rain and streaming. He sees his mother's smile, the teeth gnawed to arrowheads. He hears the Haitians sing without R's as they swing the great machetes. Catalina, they sing, Catalina, mi madre, mi amor en muerte. God knows his mother was no stupid woman. She could roll an R like a queen. Even a parrot can roll an R. In the bare room, the bright feathers arch in a parody of greenery as the last pale crumbs disappear under the blackened tongue. Someone calls out his name in a voice so like his mother's. A startled tear splashes the tip of his right boot. My mother, my love and death. The general remembers the tiny green sprigs men of his village wore in their capes to honor the birth of a son. He will order many this time to be killed for a single beautiful word. I'll bring us out of this hole in a minute. I'm going to move over to some new poems because they're always, people ask me what my favorite poem of mine, and it's always, like children, you never say, but it's always the one I think that I'm working on now that I'm cursing and, happy to see sometimes. So a few new poems. This one was actually prompted by our daughter, who, when she was 3 and 4, used to walk around the house singing to herself, "Nobody loves me but the spring cricket." I didn't know what a spring cricket was, why it was in spring or summer or fall, and she completely ignored us whenever we tried to find out about this cricket, who obviously loved her more than we did. But so I've started writing some poems spoken by the spring cricket. The spring cricket considers the question of negritude. I was playing my tunes all by myself. I didn't know anybody else who could play along. Sure, the tunes were sad, but sweet too, and wouldn't come until the day gave out. You know that way the sky has of dangling her last bright wisps? That's when the ache would bloom inside until I couldn't wait. I knelt down to scrape myself clean and didn't care who heard. Then came the shouts and whistles, the roundup into jars, a clamber of legs. Now there were others, tumbled, clouded. I didn't know their names. We were a musical lantern. Children slept to our rasping sighs. And if now and then one of us shook free and sang as he climbed to the brim, he would always fall again, which made them laugh and clap their hands. At least then we knew what pleased them and where the brink was. The spring cricket repudiates his parable of negritude. Hell, we just climbed. Reached the lip and fell back, slipped and started up again. Climbed to be climbing, sang to be singing. It's just what we do. No one bothered to analyze our blues until everybody involved was strung out or dead. To solve everything that was happening while it was happening would have taken some serious opium. Seriously, all wisdom is afterthought, a sort of helpless relief. So don't go thinking none of this grief belongs to you. Even if you don't know how it feels to fall, you can get my drift. And I, who live it daily, have heard that perfect word enough to know just when to use it, as in, oh hell. Hell no. No, this is hell. My family gathers during the larger family gathers during what we call the picnic holidays, the ones that, 4th of July, Memorial Day, the ones where you do barbecues. And though we all, most of us live in the Midwest, the family from the past came up from the South, and they came all up during the Great Migration. So as soon as we all get together, we change. We're not Midwesterners anymore. Family reunion. 30 seconds into the barbecue, my Cleveland cousins have everyone speaking Southern. Broadened vowels and dropped consonants, whoops and caws. It's more osmosis than magic, a sliding thrall back to a time when working the tire factories meant entire neighborhoods coming up from Georgia or Tennessee, accents helplessly intact, while their children, inflections flattened to match the field they thought they were playing on, knew it without asking when it was safe to roll out a drawl, just as it's understood potluck means resurrecting the foods we've abandoned along the way for the sake of sleeker thighs. I look over the yard to the porch with its battalion of aunts, the wavering ranks of uncles at the grill. Everywhere else, hordes of progeny are swirling, and my cousins yakking on as if they were waist deep in quicksand, but like the books recommend, aren't moving until someone hauls them free. Who are all these children? Who had them, and with whom? Through the general coffee tones, the shame genetics cut a creamy swath. Cherokee's burnt umber transposed onto generous lips, a glance flares gray above the crushed nose we label anonymous African. It's all here, the beautiful geometry of Mendel's peas and their grim logic. And though we remain clearly divided on the merits of okra, there's still time to demolish the cheese grits and tear into slow-cooked ribs so tender we agree they're worth the extra pound or two our menfolk swear will always bring them home. Pity the poor soul who lives a life without butter. Those pinched knees and tennis shoulders and hatchety smiles. I think I'm going to read you two more. Oh, maybe three. We'll see. I know we have to get out of here. I really would like to read this because it is one of the most recent poems that I've written. And as you know, I teach at the University of Virginia, which was Thomas Jefferson's dream college. Those who built it were slaves. And this particular man, his name was Henry Martin, was born into slavery at Monticello on the day that Thomas Jefferson died, which was, ironically enough, July 4th, 1826. He was responsible for ringing the bell in the rotunda at the university to ring for people who go to classes, and he did this for over 40 years. Bell ringer. I was given a name. It came out of a book, I don't know which. I've been told the great man could recite every title in order on its shelf. Well, I was born, and that's a good thing, although I arrived on the day of his passing, a day on which our country fell into mourning. This I heard over and over, from professors to farmers, even dual-scarred students. Sometimes, in grand company, remarked upon in third person, a pretty way of saying more than two men in a room means the third can be ignored, as I was when they spoke of my birth and Mr. Jefferson's death in one breath, voices dusted with wonderment, faint sunlight quivering on a hidden breeze. I listen in on the lectures whenever I can, holding still until I disappear beyond third person. And what I hear sounds right enough. It eases my mind. I know my appearance frightens some of the boys. The high cheeks and freckles and not quite Negro eyes flaring gray as storm-washed skies back home. It shames them to be reminded. So much for book learning. I nod as if to say, Uncle Henry, at your service, then continue on my way through darkness to start the day. This is my place. Stone rookery perched above the citadels of knowledge, alone with the bats and my bell, keeping time. Up here, molten glory brims until my head's rinsed clear. I am no longer a dreadful coincidence, nor a debt crossed off in a dead man's ledger. I am not summoned, dismissed. I am the clock's keeper. I ring in their ears. And every hour, down in that shining, blistered republic, someone will pause to whisper, Henry. And for a moment, my name flies free. How are we doing? Do I have time for? I will read 2 more poems. These are debts to students who keep teaching me through the years. The first one comes about because my students I always give them a wild card, a personalized writing assignment that drives them crazy. It's guaranteed to drive them crazy. It's designed that way. And so they said to me, well, you need one too. Fair enough. So in this poem, the directive I gave myself was that every line has to begin with the same letter. So in other words, one line begins with only O's, the next line, every word begins with only P's. You'll hear it as it goes along. And the only other thing I'll say about it is that over the years, my husband and I do ballroom dancing and we love it, but I also realize that it's a very painful sport at times. Ode to my right knee. O obstreperous one, ornery outside of ordinary protocols, paramilitary proby par excellence. Every evidence you yield yells. No noise, too tough to tackle, tears springing such sudden salt when walking wrenches. Haranguer, hag, hanger-on, how much more maddening, insidious imperfection. Membranes matter-of-factly corroding, crazed cartilage calmly chipping away as another arduous ambulation begins, bone bruising bone. Leathery Lothario, lone laboring gladiator, grappling, groveling for favor, fair weather forecaster, fickle friend, jive jiggy joint. Kindly keep kicking. And I will end with this, and I thank you all again so much for coming. Thank you, Giovanni, for arranging all of this. It just feels good in here. Thank you. This poem is also, I owe this to a student who, once he left his MFA program and everything, he started an online magazine called Q, which specialized in the prose poem. And so he asked me for a prose poem, which he said, to his knowledge, I'd only written one. He had researched it. And I said, I'm not sure I believe in them, but I will write one for you. Prose in a small space. It's supposed to be prose if it runs on and on, isn't it? All those words, too many to fall into rank and file, stumbling, bare-ass drunk onto the field, reporting for duty, yes, sir, spilling out as shamelessly as the glut from a mega-billion-dollar chemical facility. Just the amount of glittering effluvium it takes to transport a little girl across a room. Beige carpet thick under her Oxfords, curtains blousy with spring. Is that the scent of daffodils drifting in? Daffodils don't smell, but prose doesn't care. Prose likes to hear itself talk. Prose is development and denouement, anticipation hovering near the canopies, lust rampant in the antepasta. For example, a silver fork fingered sadly as the heroine crumples a linen napkin in her lap to keep from crying out at the sight of Lord Campion's regal brow inclined tenderly toward the wealthy young widow. Prose applauds such syntactical dalliances. Then is it poetry if it's confined. Trembling along its axis, a flagpole come alive in high wind, flapping its radiant sleeve for attention. Over here, it's me, while the white spaces, air, field, early morning silence before the school bell, shape themselves around that one bright seizure. And if that's so, what do we have here? A dream or 3 paragraphs? We have white space too. Is this music? As for all the words left out, banging at the gates, we could let them in. But where would we go with our orders, our stuttering pride? Thank you.